Hi, it's Jen, here to welcome you to today's podcast. Our conversation today is one that challenges a lot of assumptions about safety, about relationships, and about what it really means to be watched, followed, and controlled over time. When people hear the word stalking, they often imagine something dramatic or obvious or very extreme, or they picture the kinds of stories that we see in the media. But the reality is often much quieter, more confusing, and far more common than we realize. In this episode, we're talking about stalking through lived experience, what it actually feels like before you even have language for it, how it can start in ways that don't immediately feel dangerous, and why so many people question themselves before they realize what's happening. We're also going to talk about the energy it can take just to get through each day as a stalking victim. We're also going to ground this conversation in what resources are available and what protections exist here in Maryland, including survivor-led support like Just Stalking and local organizations working to help keep people safe. If you're listening and you're unsure if whether what you're going through counts, this episode is for you. You deserve clarity, validation, and support. We're joined today by Turquoise, who will share insights from both personal experience and her work with survivors. Together, we'll explore how stalking shows up in everyday life, why it's often misunderstood and even minimized, and the impact it can have on a person's sense of safety, trust, and identity. Turquoise Williams is a native Marylander. She has an extensive background in psychology and mental health with an MA in forensic psychology, as well as being a certified victims advocate. She was formerly a forensic employment specialist, working with those who had previous involvement with the criminal justice system. After 15 years as a stalking victim who found it difficult to locate the additional resources needed to manage both the pursuit and her own responses, she started Just Stalking Resources. It's a local organization that helps Maryland stalking victims identify more easily the necessary resources. We hope you enjoy today's episode. All right, we are here today with Turquoise Williams of Just Stalking Resources.
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Well, so we also go by Just Stalking Maryland Resources. And the reason for that is while we do provide information for stalking in general, we focus most specifically on Maryland.
Maryland. That makes total sense. Well, as we get started, will you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Turquoise. I've been a stalking victim for over 15 years. I am a Maryland native, so I am very familiar with Maryland pride. Anyone who's from here knows that we are huge on our flag. So we incorporate our flag into a lot of our brochures and our pamphlets and our table. Anybody who's seen our table out in the community will see that our flag is on a lot of our stuff.
Nice.
So I try to incorporate like our colors into things, just try to be a little, prideful in Maryland. Just kind of make it fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm not a Maryland native, but I did take very quickly to
our Maryland stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
You'll see people have like Maryland tattoos. I do not have one. I don't, but I might get one just since it's kind of like the thing.
It is the thing. So before we get into like all the definitions and systems and whatnot, can you talk about how Just Stalking defines stalking, or how you would define it?
Sure. So we define it as a course of conduct that has gone on for at least 2 weeks, that causes emotional distress. We don't necessarily include fear, although fear is often considered a requirement. There is a whole debate within the stalking literature and within the laws. I think lowering the threshold to emotional distress would be more useful. I also think that maybe looking at the specific behaviors would be more useful. Taking the onus off the victim and onto the objective behaviors of what has been done. What can we track?
Yeah.
Saying what what can we document? What can we see? What can the victim themselves produce in terms of evidence? Or what can a bystander produce in terms of evidence? Supporting documentation, things like that would be helpful.
Okay.
And specifically in terms going back to what I said in terms of the 2 weeks, there's been debate about should it be 2 weeks or 10 incidents. I'm open to having that conversation, but I think the 2 weeks I like the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't know that this is the time to get into that, but I like the 2 weeks.
Yeah. I feel like when people hear the word stalking, they think of like extreme examples, or also even these kind of almost romanticized examples that you see on like TV and in movies and stuff. And so because there's like this idea of it, what do you feel like people commonly miss about stalking?
A lot. I think people miss a lot. I was at an event just the other day I was telling you about earlier. One of the things that we spend a lot of time discussing is the different motivations, as well as the different commonly known as relationships, but it's also referred to as typology. So essentially the idea that it can happen between any number of people. So let's start there. It can happen between any number of people. I could meet a stranger in the street, and for whatever reason, I think one of the most jarring stories, or jarring, I'll use the word jarring for the sake of this conversation. It really woke me up in my earliest research, and was helpful for me in being able to have these conversations with people. The idea that it doesn't have to be between ex-intimates or somebody that you know well. The story was, I tell it often in trainings or in other conversations, there was a person who they were cut off in the process of parking. And they got very upset. Long story short, they found out that person's information based on the license plate and proceeded to stalk the victim for over a year.
Wow. So like the victim had no clue that this person even really existed, probably.
Mm-mm. It was a traffic incident. Simply put. Right. You know, the idea, and I don't tell these stories to scare people. I tell them to explain to people that it's not necessarily what you might have heard in the media. It's not necessarily what you might have heard in movies or whatever. Right. Or maybe you might have, right? Like, but those are real stories. Those are real things that happen.
Yeah.
I hear a lot, or I hear not infrequently, I should say, neighborhood disputes, workplace disputes. I think that's the other thing, is the disputes. People have a way of thinking that it's an intimate situation.
It's tied to like a romantic relationship. It's tied to
yes, exactly.
It's always an ex or something.
Exactly. And that there's a history there that I won't get into, but that stalking is tied to a romantic thing, that it's either a lover who can't let go and is mad, or a lover who can't let go and wants you back. There's lots of types of stalking, or a number, but there are a number of types of stalking. Going back to the other piece, which is motivation. I was saying at this fair that the motivation piece of, have you ever been in a situation where you got mad at somebody and you were like, now I want to find out all about you and get back at you. We don't think about that as stalking, but it is.
It is. And is under the law, and like in Maryland, and I don't expect you to get into like every legal detail, but is that going to be treated differently than like a former relationship?
So technically it shouldn't be, technically, but the way in which the law is worded, it doesn't really allow for that type of stalking to be addressed. The way in which the law is worded, it's more geared towards romantic partners.
Yeah.
Or a romantic situation, or it's presupposing that and that goes into another piece of the conversation, right? That it's presupposing that a man is stalking a woman,
right?
And that man was probably an ex-partner or wants to be a partner. And what I have found in my work, which and in the work that the reason that we created this work was, I don't know if I said that right, but that's okay. That's not always the case. There have been a number of situations, scenarios that existed that was the whole basis for this organization. That's not the only type of stalking that exists.
Yeah.
And people, when they hear what we do, they're like, oh, I had blah, 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 fill in the blank.
Right. And then they start to see it and
they
what's happening.
They say like, I had this happen. I didn't really know what to do. And sometimes it's, well, actually that's still happening to me right now. And it's been happening for X number of months, years, years, often years. And they just tolerate it. Which is what happens to me. Like, you just tolerate it. You just are like, well, this is just how I live now.
Yeah.
This is just how I live. Men on men, women on women. And exactly as I said, it's not, sometimes there's no romantic piece whatsoever. It's a client who didn't like the service that you provided. It's a coworker who feels that they're not getting paid adequately.
Yeah. So it could be really any number of things.
It could be any number of things.
Yeah. What are some of the most common stalking behaviors that you hear about from survivors or that you've seen?
Common. I mean, we live in a world in which social media technology is or mediated tactics, as it were, is a huge piece of it. Excuse me. And by mediated tactics, what I'm referring to is you're using some kind of piece to mediate how you're not directly corresponding.
Okay.
So I'm not coming up to you and doing something. There's
like, it's not a direct confrontation.
Right. So I could be texting you or sending you an instant message or a direct message, or I guess we don't have instant messages anymore. Taking myself up on that. Just realized that that's not a thing. They call them direct messages now.
Yeah.
Anyway, we, texting, phone calling, voicemails. I don't think people even leave voicemails anymore, but stalkers will. And so what there has been some research on is that certain stalkers are more likely, and I don't have that at the tip of my fingers. I think I may have written a little bit about this on our website, but that some stalkers are more likely to do more specific types of tactics.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Yeah. Or behaviors. I believe, but don't quote me on this, that resentful stalkers are more likely to harass, but they're not necessarily going to be as inclined to follow through on that harassment type of thing.
It's like more like threats and stuff, but not necessarily the danger level might not be the same.
Right. So exactly. So there has been those types of, like this stalker is more likely to do this. So, and personally, as an aside, I have been wanting to see more breakdown of that kind of research.
Yeah.
Like what type of stalker is more likely to do what kind of thing. I think there should be more research on that.
I imagine it's probably not researched very much.
Well, it's not. And I think as somebody who experienced it and as somebody who wants to be able to give information to people, I think there is a lot of fear associated with stalking. And I think being able to say, like, while you absolutely should be concerned and create safety plans and things like that, you also should be able to understand if you fit into this category, you don't necessarily have to have the same level of concern of this other category of this thing. That doesn't mean any concern whatsoever,
Right.
that means you should be concerned about these things, not those things over here. Because a lot of times I think the extent to which we're having fear is for categories that we're not even necessarily fitting into. If you're following what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, like the data I think is far too broad.
No, I believe that, because when we look at like the lethality assessment program, it's a tool that we use to determine level of risk for someone who's in an intimate partner violence relationship,
Exactly.
right? And so that's been studied very thoroughly to the point where we came up with the list of questions to be able to help determine someone's level of danger. And so I completely see what you're saying, because yeah, there's spaces where people are in abusive relationships, but they're not in danger of like being killed or even being like physically abused, but they're still in a bad situation. And I feel like that's what you're saying, that even with stalking, there's different categories. And so if we had better research and education, then we could better equip survivors to know how to better protect themselves.
Right. And I think it's a sensitive topic, you know, and I think there's a lot of pushback from different people and with different agendas. And I understand why they have those agendas, and I'm not necessarily trying to like argue, you know, start arguments about it. But I think, and I think part of the reason for that is like people, they want more protections.
Yeah.
And I understand, I want I wouldn't have done this if I didn't want protections.
Right.
But I also think that we have to differentiate the issues around, what you're looking at. Right. And I think there's been a lot of focus on certain, like I said, on certain types of stalking and not enough on some of these other, like, as I just mentioned, resentful would be an example. Intimacy seeking would be another. And understanding. So one of the things that I'm thinking of in this moment is like persistent. There's not enough. I don't know if you're going to ask about this, but like, there's not enough discussion around persistence or recurrence outside of physical violence.
Okay.
And if you understand that, those things, while they may not cause like physical violence, still cause people to move.
Right.
They still cause people to have job loss, economic loss, things of that nature. And I'm not aware of an assessment that would address those pieces.
Right. Like the harm that comes, that's not the physical, that's not the life threatening, but it's still a pretty big cost to people.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the mental load of just being on.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. The trauma to yourself, to your community, it's very significant.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that point up. That's a really good one. What's a red flag that you wish people would take seriously sooner?
I think going back to like what I had said before, I don't know that you can have like a perfect universal flag for all the different types of stalking, but I think, recognizing that you asked somebody to say stop and they didn't stop. I think there's like, that's just not taken seriously. Like, it's just not taken seriously. Like I meaning the victim said stop and the person didn't stop. I think we need to like get away from this idea that there was a gray area there. Yeah. And I think we need to teach that to victims and the community that like, if you mean stop, you should mean stop. Like we should get away from like, oh, I'm just kidding type of thing, or like a back and forth. You know, I was having that conversation with the colleague, and like, if you mean it, you should mean it. Or if you say it, you should mean it, excuse me. And telling, providers, meaning what, and by providers, I mean that in a very broad sense, mental health workers, law enforcement, the court system, whatever. If they said it, they meant it. Like we should all just get on the same page of like, stop means stop. So that when I then take it to get like a peace order or protective order or or further into the criminal justice like lens of or system of this is very serious, you know, it's not working. I'm not kidding around. I'm not, you know, stop means stop.
Stop means stop. Yeah. No, I get that. And I think, again, that goes back to what you were saying before about the different levels and like different categories. But that probably is a more universal piece of it, is at one point the victim, the survivor said, please stop doing that.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's not heated. And so, and to be able to show like law enforcement or the courts or whoever, you know, I asked them to stop and it's been continuing. And so now it's like, it's created this pattern of harm, you know, and I feel like, it feels like to me that stalking, more so than some of the other categories of harm and violence, requires a higher level of work on the part of the victim to prove that something's happened.
Yes, it does.
So when you're like thinking about your own story, working with like survivors, what do you tell them in terms of like how to navigate that, like documentation or?
Yeah, you need to document. I mean, I think you need to document it. You need to have, you need to document it. Absolutely. To answer that piece. You need to be very clear. Stop. Do not engage past stop. Do not plead and negotiate and navigate and what have you. You need to you should show that you have tried to put up some kind of like, he wanted to say barrier, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Like, that you've done something so that you can display to the courts, so you can display to law enforcement, any or all of the authorities involved, that this is causing a problem, because you can say the words, but showing that you've done something, that this is a problem for your life, but also that you are not just sitting by idly and like hoping that someone else will fly in as a white knight type of thing. Yeah. So like whether that be changing your door handles, like locks, deadbolts, what have you, putting up security cameras, putting up a fence. First of all, part of these things that we recommend, and we do this, we have victims trainings, and we have like tips that we put out on social media and all these different things, where we talk about different recommendations, right? The reason is nothing is ever just one idea for one reason. The reasons are for your actual safety, right? Like they are intended to be helpful. But for example, again, to use my experiences, like, cause my thought process was always like, well, my stalker was not somebody I knew. So I was like, well, why do I have to change my locks? He doesn't have, it's not like he has a key. He's not exactly that. He's not an ex-partner. I'm not worried about him doing any of these things. But it's also about perception. Right. So the court wants to see like that you have done, like, well, what are you doing that shows me that you're actually scared? There are buzzwords, and we talk about buzzwords that can be used with, again, law enforcement or the courts, that you should be using to show I'm actually really scared here. You know, there are phrases that have been shown to be more useful. One of the things that I've heard, different people talk about, is researchers and others talk about, is unfortunately the people who do not say that they are scared are less likely to have successful prosecutions. You have to say, you have to be willing to say, I am scared. Yeah. And for a lot of us, including myself, like, we're not willing to say that. It's hard to admit you're scared. Yeah. Like socially, like culturally. I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of us don't want to say it. We weren't taught to say it. We weren't brought up to say it. But if you're not willing to say it, you won't get what it is that you want. Theoretically. Theoretically. If what you want theoretically is to have the offender prosecuted, then you're going to have to be willing to, in open court or in some level of, this criminal justice system, you're going to have to be willing to say, I am afraid of this person, because the law requires that you be afraid, which to the earlier conversation that we were having, the onus is on you as the victim to be afraid. It has nothing to do with whether or not my stalker and other stalkers that I've specifically spoken to, there's boatloads of evidence, right? Like we have video and pictures and witnesses saying this person did A, B, and C. And then I can ask you as the victim, well, why are you afraid? No, I'm fine.
And so then it's all like, well, it's not a big deal.
Right.
If they're not afraid. That is wild, Turquoise. Like you just said so many things that are just, one, it's not surprising to me being in this work, but all the stuff that you just listed that the victim would, if they do, it's going to help their case and also going to make them feel safer, getting new locks, getting, cameras, maybe putting up a privacy fence or something. That's also, there's a cost to that.
Well, of course. Yeah.
So it's like how much money
So I think
having to spend
that we would long term, we would really like to be able to do is be able to have more funding so that we can, especially for lower income residents, is be able to support them in those ways. I 100% agree with, we're not in a position to do that right now, but that is something that we would like to be able to do, is be able to create those kinds of supports, because there was a time where I was not as fortunate as I am right now to have those kinds of supports. And you create a lot of difficulty again. Exactly. I could go on and on talking about some of these as issues in terms of exactly that. If you have problems with, if the stalker is going to their job, right. And risking their job, if you don't have a job, if you lose your job, then you've got a problem. You've got even bigger problem than you had before.
And I can see how that might then make a victim afraid to speak up. Right. To tell their employer this thing's happening.
And then it's a catch-22, right? If you don't tell your employer, then you have a problem. But if you tell your employer, you could have a problem. But a lot of times there are situations in which that person may show up at your job and make such a scene, you don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah.
Then you've got the problem of how many scenarios involve workplace stalking. It's again, going to the much earlier conversation, it's much more common than people recognize.
Right.
Work-related stalking, professional-related stalking.
And and I think it's great to have for your organization as a nonprofit and other nonprofits to want to support victims in getting those things they need. But it just is ridiculous that they even need to. Just the way it just sounds like sometimes survivors have to upend their lives.
Yeah.
To feel safe, but then also to prove to the entities that they need protection or that someone needs to step in. It just feels like a very high bar of work on a victim.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I think it's disappointing that it's on victims to do all of this, but at the same time, I think I've made the analogy a million times. It's not unlike having a severe illness or more specifically a chronic illness or more accurately a chronic illness where, because I think a lot of times people are like, I don't know the laws. I don't know how to navigate the criminal justice system. I don't know the definitions of X, Y, or Z. I agree with you. And you shouldn't have to. But it becomes our job to learn these systems, to learn these terms, to learn these things, because you have to take responsibility for this situation. The same way a person with diabetes or cancer or what have you has to learn the medical system as well as the condition. So you're going to have to learn the criminal justice system as well as what stalking is.
That's a great analogy, actually. I appreciate you saying that because, it does. This thing happened to you. That's not your fault.
Right. Of course not. Yeah, no, it's not. It's in no way your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. Whether it's because you decided to break off a relationship or park in a way that somebody didn't like,
Right.
it's not your fault, but it is now happening to you.
Yeah.
And you are now going to have to manage it for the foreseeable future. I think that's another thing that is really hard for people to swallow. This is not going to be, unlike a lot of crimes, not all, but a lot of crimes, this is not going to be a one and done. This is not somebody broke into my house, stole my stuff, and I have to file an insurance claim and go and deal with the court one time. This is going to be potentially, like I said, I've been a stalking victim for over 15 years.
Yeah.
He's gone in and out of the criminal justice system. I've been dealing with the criminal justice system since I was a teenager. Right? So, and I've heard the same from other victims that they dealing with it over and over and over again. They go to jail, they go to prison, they come out, they come back, they keep going. And I was naive to this whole thing. And I thought multiple times, oh, okay, it's going to be done. And then he kept showing up at my door.
Yeah.
This is what happens. And you have to learn more about this as a subject, but also learn more about the system. What are your rights? So one of the things we do a lot of is teach victims what their rights are generally, not just what stalking is as a subject matter, but also, you have rights in Maryland. We have more rights in this state than in some other states. And I think that's really important for people to know.
Yeah. And I think that's why your website, I've looked at it, is really good.
Thank you.
It does give people that information.
Yeah.
It's, and I just feel like when you and I had talked before, and you had shared that it had been like over 15 years. And I think that's another thing people don't think about or understand, that it can go on for a long time. It's not a quick thing necessarily.
No. Yeah, we talk a lot about it really, for a lot of victims, it can be about management. This is about learning to navigate and manage this as a situation, and learning how to speak to your neighbors, speak to your coworkers, and inform them, who is this person? How should I tell them who this, who that person is in your life? We have bystander training, so it's like, if you have somebody who is, because especially for some types of stalking, this can be somebody who's hassling your whole workplace, your whole community. And it can be very helpful for people if that person is coming to your place of worship or what have you. How can they help support you?
Yeah.
And learn more about, how should they be reporting to you and tell you, hey, I saw this person lurking in the neighborhood. I saw this person doing X, Y, or Z. What should I do? Should I report to you? Should I report to the police, et cetera, et cetera? I think that's often a piece in terms of another question you were asking about, like, what else can we do? I think making sure you have as much evidence as possible as the years go on. This is, like you said, we're measuring in years, not days, not, hours.
Yeah. What, kind of with that, thinking about the community and the people around you, what for you have people done that's helpful? And what have people done that have actually caused harm in trying to support you or trying to understand, maybe, if you want to share?
This is an interesting question. What have they done that was helpful? So we have, I'll start with what's helpful, because I feel like that's the less scary question. I think, let me say it this way. Our entire bystander training is based off of I shouldn't say that. All of what our trainings are based on what worked and what didn't work. In my experience, and in large part, right? In large part, what worked and what didn't work for me, in addition to like research and things, it's not just like, oh, this was my personal, but what worked and what didn't work in terms of, I don't want to say something like bad.
You're really doing great.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So our neighborhood stock, we have a neighborhood stock much. I don't know if you've seen it on our website. And what that is when a few of the times that my stalker was hanging out in my neighborhood and going to my job, my family, this was when my father was alive, my family and my job site had created kind of a makeshift, like, so this is like a form that you can write in. It's a PDF filler. So like it has all the questions created and fillable, and like where you can put the picture if you have one. If you have a picture of your stalker, you can put their name, identifying information, a picture of their car, identifying information of their car, type of thing. We didn't have that. And it's kind of built off of the idea behind like a missing person form type of thing. But it has it in a way that, like, if you didn't think of like the make and model of the car, so it's like it's a form. Yeah. Because a lot of times as a victim, I know that like you can get flustered and you didn't even think to make it that way.
Absolutely.
And exactly that, like we didn't know, so we just basically we had a picture of my stalker and like, this is this person, don't let him into this building. And so that was in my office, and we handed them, because we were in a suite in a building, and we shared it, and he was going around my whole building. And we handed out this flyer. We were like, don't engage with this person. And same thing with my neighborhood. He was hanging out in my neighborhood, and we were like, don't engage with this person. Right. Don't talk to them. Don't give them any information about me, etc. Those were the types of things that were helpful, like in the sense of my family being helpful in coming up with those ideas, sending emails out and being and telling people not to engage, my workplace being supportive and not being upset, you know, because I worked in a mental health facility, and it was not great that I had one person causing harm to other clients. Right. You know, I was very concerned for my job. I was very concerned for my clients. I was very concerned for the well-being of other people who had nothing to do with anything. I mean, technically nobody had anything to do with anything. Right. The whole thing was not good. Right. It was horrible. It was horrible. You know, and I was a younger person than I am now, and I was embarrassed and I felt bad and I didn't know what to do. Yeah. There's no handbook. I mean, I think basically we're trying to create some version of like when they say there's no handbook, we're trying to create a handbook. Right, exactly. I'm like, there's no whenever they say there's no handbook, that's what we're trying to do. It's not like a roadmap. Right. Here's the roadmap. Here's the handbook. What do you do? Here we go. Like, that's what we're trying to do. But that was, in terms of being helpful, those were the kinds of things that were helpful, is people not getting upset and not freaking out. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, because I can also see this being a space that is ripe for the survivor having to end up comforting other people.
Oh, yeah.
You know, of like, you're trying to explain this thing, just trying to get people to know, I want you to be on the same page. And now they're like, oh my gosh. And now you're trying to make them feel better. So it just seems like there's so many like layers to this. And
there are a lot of layers. And people are not always kind. People are not always understanding. And some people have every right to not be kind and understanding. You know, like I wouldn't have judged them then, and I wouldn't judge them now. Yeah.
It's a lot. Well, and I think like we don't have to go back to the question about stuff being like harmful or whatever, or causing harm, but thinking about
the only thing I would say about being harmful, I don't know that anyone intentionally caused harm, right? I think that one of the things that I highlight in general in my life at this point, but I definitely like a takeaway from that time is this like awareness. My stalker sat on my street for a month and none of my neighbors seemed to notice. And I think one of the things that I highlight is when you see things, you should say things.
Just like checking.
I'm just kind of surprised that these are things that like, and I'm not saying that to call people out. I'm not saying that to shame people, but I do think that we live in a culture now where there's a lower level of, hey, I don't know that car. Why are, who are you? Why are you here? Type of attitude.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I think it just kind of concerns me the extent to which, and I'm not saying that to the extent that I'm perfect. I don't think that I'm perfect. I know I've made mistakes in my awareness, but I think we should all, and I know that I am now a very hyper vigilant, like I've like this swung the pendulum, right? But I think we should all just kind of be more aware. If you notice things that seem out of place, maybe say something.
Especially over a period of time. Like it's one thing if it's an unusual car for like one day, but if it's like multiple days and then over a month, like it's okay to say something.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Thinking about stuff that could cause harm, are there situations in which you've seen people minimize what's happening?
I would say years ago when I was first, when I was first dealing with my stalker, I heard that a little bit. I don't think anybody realized I was being stalked.
Yeah.
And I think that's true in general at the beginning a lot of times when you're not really recognizing what it is.
Well, that actually like brings me to another question. Like at the beginning for victims and survivors, whether yours or others that you've worked with, can you talk about that? How sometimes it might start off more as confusing, more so than scary, or is there that?
Yeah, I think for a lot of victims it is. I know when I was talking to a victim I'm kind of working with now, have been working with like recently. I think she was confused in the beginning. There was a level of confusion.
Yeah.
Because it started off as, I'm trying to remember exactly how I was, the information I was getting. Information I remember getting, I'm trying to think the chronology of the story. My understanding was it started with like a harassing email. There was like one or two harassing correspondence, so like mediated tactics or behaviors, excuse me, and then there was like a weird gift. I don't know how I would describe that, but it was a strange gift. And I don't know that I know enough about the details of it to say, but I think there was a level of confusion.
Right.
And I also know that there's a relationship type, so typology, where, and I don't know that this is the place to get into it, but so there's unknown stalkers and there's stranger stalkers. And essentially, the idea that you don't know who your stalker is where I'm going with that. If you don't know that, bless you. If you don't know, so a stranger is, I don't, so say I don't know, the person at the front desk, right? That's a person I don't know. Whereas an unknown person is somebody, there's somebody stalking me, but I don't know who they are.
Right.
Is that?
So a stranger is like, you might know their name, who they are, but you don't know that. They're not a person in your life. Whereas an unknown is completely, it could be anybody.
Exactly.
You don't have a name. You don't have where they are.
Exactly.
Okay.
And those are scary they're obviously both horrifying, but they're scary for different reasons. Yeah. And in different ways. And a couple of victims now have come to us with what I believe, based on the way it was explained to me, because sometimes people come to us after things are over and they're coming to us for different reasons, but they have come to us from the way it was described to us, or described to us, me. It seemed like what they were describing was unknown stalking. And that's not, I mean, it's not common. It's not unheard of, but it's not, obviously, because we have terms for it, but it's not, at least the understanding is that it's not common. I theorize that some of these things might be more common if we looked into the different, again, if we tried to grab individual data more often. I think a lot of times the data that we grab is more generalized, and that's understandable for any number of reasons. But I was very interested in that, in part going back to what we were saying. If you're getting communication or gifts or whatever, just randomly, and you're not even sure what's going on, you might be like, oh, well, maybe it was a mistake.
Right. Like maybe it was like, like a wrong number. Like maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe the mail messed up. Maybe, I get wrong mail all the time. I don't know about you, but it's just like the wrong person. Or maybe it was a free gift. Or maybe, your brain tries to make sense of it. It doesn't go to stalking. No. No, absolutely. You're going to try and figure it out. And the most dangerous thing is not going to be the first thing that pops into your head. No, it's always, you want to explain it away. That's just what we do.
Yeah, no.
Let's talk a little about Maryland. Do you want to talk? Can you speak a little to like what protections exist in Maryland for stalking victims, or what don't you want to do?
None. I mean, I'm exaggerating. That's an exaggeration. We don't have a lot.
Yeah.
Like it's not
great.
It's not great. That's why we do what we do.
Right.
Is because a lot of what we do is advocacy. That is a lot of what we do. We encourage legislative advocacy. There's been a little bit of movement, kind of, hopefully, not a lot. We advocate for we advocate for legislative changes, both in a direct and indirect way. And what I mean by that is we are advocating for the direct stalking law to be improved, like the stalking law. But we are also advocating for adjacent laws. And by that, like the one that we advocated, or that advocated currently right now are advocating for, is there's a privacy law that we are advocating for, so that essentially when you file charges right now, or even file for a piece of protective order, I don't know if you are aware of this, probably would be, that your information, your private information is included in that.
Right. Name, address.
Exactly. So what we are advocating, what originally that law was only going to say that sexual assault victims would have their information shielded from the public, and most specifically from the offender. And we said, hey, what about stalking victims?
Yeah.
We kind of, if anything, we're probably very high on the list of people that need to have their information shielded.
Right. So,
and we were very fortunate to be included in that. They were like, yeah, that's a good point. I know. So it's those kinds of laws, because so to be clear to anybody who might be listening to this, you can have your information shielded. You can, but you have to file. It's an extra step. And for a lot of us, especially going back to like my time, like when I was, again, a kid, I had never been involved in the system before. Like nobody told you about victims' rights. I mean, it feels like it wasn't that long ago, but at the same time, it was like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Nobody bothered to say anything to me. So while I'm not saying that's how my stalker found out where I lived, it's altogether possible. And you know,
Well, it didn't help.
it didn't exactly. We're back to like one of those things where it didn't help. And I think a lot of us as victims, it's like once they get that, you know, it's breadcrumbs leading them to us and giving them just more and more and more. And I say all that to say, when you're adding it's like adding steps for somebody who's already going through whatever, it's not right. So I think there are a lot of us who their information was disclosed that it shouldn't have been, and there's no reason for it. I don't understand why you're doing that. So yes, you can do it now, just so if there's anybody who's unclear, and all that information is, like I said, available on our website. You can get it. You can get access to that. But a lot of us, we weren't even told.
Right.
So by the time we were told, it was too late.
It was too late. It's already on the Maryland case search.
So, you know, I do think that that's very important. So hopefully we'll learn literally within a few days whether or not.
Yeah, because they're about to wrap up
they're about to wrap up the session.
And just for listeners, we are going to have the links in the show notes and all the things, so they'll be able to look at your website. But I think you and I had talked about this before too, because there is like the address confidentiality program in Maryland.
Yes.
But again, when you're talking about stalking, it's not always that simple.
No.
Because when you're talking about someone who's intent on finding out where you are and who you're with or what you're doing,
in my opinion, you would have to change your whole... Well, I shouldn't say that. Well, I think it's very possible that you would have to change a lot of your life. If somebody is very intent, it's altogether possible for some victims and some stalkers that you be, and I say that, again, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I think it is a case by case basis situation.
Sure.
But it is very possible that, because like, okay, for the sake of conversation, I could move houses, but that doesn't help if I'm still going to the same coffee shop.
Right.
And I'm saying that based on like actual like situations and information that I'm aware of. You have to change a lot of your behavior, because if they know you, if they know enough about you, they can still find you based on X, Y, or Z. So, I don't remember. There was something that I was reading recently, and it said something to the effect of the majority of stalkers that were surveyed said that the reason they stopped stalking was because they chose to stop, not because of any response that the victim engaged in, and not because of anything that the victim did or didn't do.
Right.
But because they were like, I'm done. I'm ready to be done.
That's like really good data. Like that's a really interesting piece of information. I think just, again, points back to how the systems that are currently in place are just not enough. They're not adequate.
No, I don't think
to stop it, to protect victims from harm, from ongoing stress.
No, and I think to finish answering your earlier question about, you know, what is, you know, making sure Maryland is doing enough. I think there are a number of things that I think that Maryland could be doing better, should be doing better. I think, and it's a sensitive question, right? But I do think, as I had said at the beginning, right, in terms of, I am concerned about not only fear, but fear specifically of certain things. Mm-hmm. So like, because it doesn't just say, are you afraid? It says, are you afraid of bodily injury, sexual assault? I think it's kidnapping. I have it here. Serious bodily injury, assault, rape, sexual offense, or attempted sexual offense or rape.
So those are the questions there. Are you afraid of these specific things?
Reasonable fear. Reasonable fear. So, and I say that to the extent of what it's also been found is that Black women are 48% less likely to report fear than white women. Older women are 2% less likely to report fear. And education is also a predictor with college degrees, with people with college degrees, 52% more fearful. So people with education are more fearful than people without. Also, fear is it's like a bell curve, right? So at the beginning, you're more likely to have fear. Then, I don't know if I described bell curve right, but you're more likely to have fear. Then it kind of drops off. And yeah, that's not a bell curve, but it drops off.
Yeah.
And then you have less fear the longer stalking persists. You just kind of, as I was describing before, it kind of normalizes.
Well, and kind of like you were saying, that hypervigilance, if that's on all the time, you just get used to that being your normal state. So
possibly, I mean, I think there's been a number of, there have been different theories and there's different research around the thoughts around it, if that makes sense. To the extent of different variables being evaluated, and different demographics and things like that. So I think the hypervigilance could be a factor. I wouldn't discount it.
Yeah.
I think you also just you're like, well, this is, this is just how I live now. I mean,
right.
I think
there's some just acceptance of it.
Yeah, there's just
my reality.
This is what they do. Right. I don't, this is what this is. This is how I am. I think, again, it probably also depends on the relationship typology, the motivation,
sure.
how their behaviors. I think potentially if somebody is sending texts as opposed to physically approaching you, as opposed to saying certain types of threats as a direct or indirect way, if they are involving other people, if they're going to your job, like we were talking about a moment ago. I mean, I think any number of things probably are factors.
Sure.
I don't know that you can control for all those variables. I don't. It's probably it's a complicated thing. But in terms of having a conversation about the law, right? The idea that behaviorally, for the sake of conversation, and I don't know that this is the venue to get into it, but behaviorally, you could have somebody who has been stalking for a long period, or even stalking in a behaviorally violent way. Aside the fact that, yes, they absolutely could then be charged with a different crime. Let's say, yes, they could be charged with a different crime, and that's its own thing. I don't dispute that. But just on the face of stalking alone, you're not going to get them under the stalking law.
Right.
Because if it's a man who's not afraid of a woman for the sake of, I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, was it today? It doesn't matter. And men will not necessarily say they're afraid of women or other men the same way as a woman will say she's afraid of a man, despite the fact that women can be very violent, and research has found that women are in fact just as dangerous in these scenarios.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense. Again, I'm not surprised by it, but you don't hear those narratives. The stories aren't really, the statistics aren't shared very often, because again, the stereotype is it's a man stalking a woman for these reasons. And yeah, but again, it all makes sense. Even the thing you were saying about Black women being less likely to say they're afraid, because again, society has been conditioning Black women since the dawn of time that you have a higher pain tolerance, you're not afraid, you have to project this certain thing into the world. And so, and then if they do say they're afraid, I imagine, there's probably not statistics for this, but that they're probably less likely to be believed, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know. I don't have that off the top of my head, and I don't know that there is statistics like you said, but I can almost guarantee
we see it in other categories, right?
Nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody cares.
I think that's the part that I came up with from our conversation we had before, is just that sense that when it comes to people who are experiencing stalking, the general sense is well, what can we do about it? And it's from a the law standpoint and law enforcement, the courts, and it just is, it feels it must feel just very defeating at times of you really are having to do it yourself. You're having to write the book, because who else is going to do it? And it just is, it's not treated as at this with the same degree of like concern or urgency as other types of victimization and other types of violence. And so it does just feel and I imagine it has to probably feel very isolating for people who are going through it if they don't know about resources like yours and they don't have a community that's supporting them.
I find that victims feel very isolated. They tend to think that it just, which is what happened to me. They think this is just, I'm the only one who's ever gone through this.
Yeah.
And they seem to, there's like this unspoken, like almost like we were told, especially because it doesn't fit what's happening on television.
Right.
So it's like, you think, I'm a freak. I don't know like a better way to say that, but like I'm some kind of outlier, like something weird is happening. No one's ever gone through anything like this before. I'm the weird one. I shouldn't talk about it. All sorts of, and then you're annoying for talking about it over and over and over again. Like, because it's year after year after year. Right. At some point, no one wants to hear about it anymore. Nobody wants to talk about, the same complaint that you had back in the early 2000s. Like, no one's like, shut up.
Yeah. They moved on.
Yeah.
I could honestly talk to you about this all day. I just feel like you're such a wealth of knowledge, both
you.
from your personal experience, but the work you've done. But like, as we wrap up, what would you say are steps a survivor in Maryland can take if they're being stalked?
I would definitely document it. And I think I was reading about this earlier. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know for myself that documenting when somebody has called you for the 100th time in a day is emotionally exhausting. I understand that. I empathize with that. But it can be extremely helpful, even for yourself, even if you have no intention of reporting, because then you can figure out, or it can help you figure out whether or not there is some kind of change, whether or not there is an increase or decrease in severity or frequency, as we were, kind of talking about. It can help you with safety planning. It can help you articulate with authorities what's going on. You can go back and say, if and when you do want to report it, you'll have that information. Right. If you don't have that written down, it's lost. One of the things that we talk about that's often lost is don't just write down what happened, but how did you feel about what happened? Okay. Who else was there when it happened? Make sure you have witnesses, make sure you gather whatever evidence you can, take pictures, etc. Our stalking log is pretty elaborate. You don't have to fill out everything, but trying to make sure you add to that when you can, can be helpful. I think there's a lot, people just want to write time, date, whatever. There's more to consider, that I didn't know when it was happening to me. But like we were saying, this is something that's going to be measured in years potentially. And you're not going to remember. You'll think, I'll remember. You won't remember. You won't. And the emotions that you're managing, your brain is not, it just can't. So being able to have all that is really important. That would be something, and encouraging people around you to do the same, which requires you to kind of disclose, requires you to say, this is what's happening. And again, it's not a shameful thing. This is something you're managing. You don't have to be ashamed of it. It can happen to anybody. Yeah. And you'd be surprised how many people have a story. Once you tell what's happening to you, you'd be surprised how many people would be like, oh, that did happen to me or my cousin or my friend or.
Yeah, I'm sure. As we like close out, what's like a thing you want to say to survivors who are listening?
What's a thing that I want to say? Even if this is something that you're managing for the foreseeable future, it is something that there's a community of people that can help you learn to manage it. And it's about, day by day, not getting overwhelmed and just trying to find the community that exists here and within your friends and family. Just, kind of learning that. And that it sometimes it feels overwhelming, but it is okay.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't feel okay, but it will be okay.
It will be okay.
Yeah.
All right, Turquoise, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was a great conversation.
I'm glad.
So thank you for being on with us today. Do you want to do a shout out about Crab Fest?
Oh, yeah. We are going to have our Crab Fest on July 11th. This is going to be instead of so we normally have an event for January's Stalking Awareness Month.
Right.
But unfortunately, we had Snowcrete this year.
We did.
We did. Like right during that. I don't remember what day that was now. I don't even remember what day that was. But anyway, so it's going to be from 4 to 8 p.m. This is going to be at the Trinity Lutheran Church on Old Georgetown Road in North Bethesda. You can get tickets on our website or on Eventbrite. I guess there'll be like a link.
Yeah, we'll put a link in there.
There'll be a link.
Yes. But I love it. It's crabs. Very Maryland.
So there'll be crabs, and there are like vegetarian, vegan options, like for anybody who can't eat that. There are other options, but it's a crab fest. And there'll be music, and it's for all ages. There's going to be like live music and a self-defense demonstration.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So there's going to be like games and activities.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, we'll link that on the website or on the socials and in our show notes. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you.